People say you got to be a great comedian, but also you have to have something special, something unique, your own thumbprint. And he does, man. And I don't know what it is about like the Mexican community that makes me just tickles me so much.
I've always taken the approach of if you want to do something, you have to make it happen, right? In my special delivery, there's a theme of like, when am I going to make it? And then I realized that the answer's in the question, when am I going to make it, right? I have to make it. I have to make the situation. Making it isn't somebody giving you the keys to the castle. Making it is you have to make something. More recently was I got to open for Joe Koy on a world tour.
Oh.
And that was like 2019, early 2020. And I figured it out and I go, wow, I've been in front of more people in those, 8-9 months than I was in front of in the previous 3 years.
The ineffable, like with English that you grew up with, I mean, certain little things that you pull, levers that you could pull with a certain language, that's so interesting and different. I mean, have you dabbled with a little tiny bit of that? I mean, you've already thought about the demographic and everything that you're going to gain from that, right?
If I can be good in Spanish, I'll tell you,
Eric Schwartz, people say you got to be a great comedian, but also you have to have something special, something unique, your own thumbprint. And he does, man. And I don't know what it is about like the Mexican community that makes me just tickles me so much. And then of course I'm Jewish, so that tickles me inherently. But
Stein, that's Jewish, are you sure?
Stein, yeah, I know. Surprise. So let's go back though to the beginning. Where are you from and why were you always the funny guy? Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I do have a kind of interesting upbringing. I come from a multicultural family. I have how I describe it is I have one brother, one sister, and 4 parents, because my parents were divorced and remarried when I was really young. So I consider all of my parents, my biological and my step parents are my parents, right?
Okay.
And so because I grew up like that, I actually have a multicultural family. I describe myself as a quarter step Mexican. My stepfather is Mexican.
Uh-huh.
So I've had that influence in my life since I was 4 years old. And, so I grew up Jewish, as you say, Jewish and with the Mexican influence. So it was definitely like, it was a cool, I like it. I like, when you're young, you think like, oh, why aren't my parents together? I wish my parents were together like everyone else's. Not everyone, because a lot of divorce out there, but as time went on, I'm like, I actually like that my parents aren't right for each other. That was a good decision. And now I get to, have more family and like, it really shaped my worldview, to just knowing about other cultures and knowing that there's more out there. I think I got a more well-rounded experience than a lot of my peers growing up.
Absolutely. I had 4 parents. Yours sound like it went better than mine did, but half of mine went all right. So,
okay.
So your stepdad was a big influence on you, because when I watch your routine, I was like, this guy's got it down. And I don't know, I just think that like the past 20 years, there's so many great like Mexican comedians and like Mexican comedy out there. It just tickles me so much. I don't know why it's so like funny inherently. Like it just is. Can you explain it?
I don't know. I mean, it's each their own, right? Because I feel like, certain people think certain things are funny and for their own reasons, right? I think that
your skit when you talk about the Mexican like bar mitzvah or the wedding, whatever they start mixing the Mexican with the Jewish, and it is freaking hilarious. But even just like watching like Mexican humor alone, just the accent it's just like it's an inherent punchline.
Well, there's a lot of like I want to touch on what you said before was there is an explosion right now of Latino comedy, which is great. There's a lot of just really, there's a guy named Rene Vaca who an amazingly, like when he started, I knew him when he started and I took him out on the road a lot, and like he would open for me for a period of time, and just to see him take off has been awesome. There's a guy, Ken Flores, who I don't know, who's also blown up. A friend of mine, Concrete, is doing great. Of course, Felipe Esparza, Fluffy, they've been doing it for a long time. But, it's just I feel like stand-up comedy as a whole has, every culture has its heroes. Yeah. And just the proliferation of stand-up comedy in the last 5-10 years, each culture has lifted up their culture's best. And there's Ralph Barbosa, there's Frankie Quinones.
Ralph Barbosa, he's the kid.
Yeah, he's pretty young.
Yeah.
I don't know him.
What was his upbringing? I'm just curious. I
don't know him. I've just seen a couple of his clips, but yeah, I don't know him.
Yeah, there's a big now. Where? Let me get into the origin. Where was the first place you performed stand up, and where was it?
First place I performed stand up was on a family vacation on a cruise ship, and they had a talent show, and I had been doing an illegal internship at a radio station where I was writing and performing comedy on a morning show. And I was like, I want to try stand up. I've always wanted to try stand up because I was a DJ and I was like always performing live. So I was always in front of crowds. I'm like, I want to do this in front of a crowd. So I entered the talent show. I did 3 main jokes in 3 minutes. And the first one did great. The second one bombed. And then the third one did great. So it was, I was hooked for sure. I always felt like I knew that I wanted to do that. And doing it on the cruise ship. Yeah. And then you got people coming up to you after for the rest of the cruise. Oh, you were great the other night. It's pretty cool.
So how long were you writing for before you did stand up for the radio show?
Probably it was in the summer, right? So I think I was 19. Yeah. And it was during a summer. So the very beginning of the summer, June, and then the cruise was probably in August. And so a couple of months I had been writing stuff, but I wrote stuff that was specifically for that night. My dad actually helped me put my set together. We did stuff about the cruise ship and, well, what if all the roles on the cruise ship were done by celebrities, and I do these impressions of people, and it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. So was that?
I wouldn't do that material today. It's pretty 101.
No, but you already had the want and you thought that you could do it because you started writing. What made you think that? Were you the funny kid in school, or what was that?
Yeah, I was when I was on the swim team, and so my teammates, I would always try to make them laugh would listen to SNL. I'd watch SNL. I'd watch or listen to comedians, and I would repeat their routines to them, and I would make them laugh. And they're like, "You should be a comedian." And I kept hearing that so much that I was like, okay, yeah, I have a power in doing that. I have a strength in doing that. Yeah. And I was always entertaining because I spent my bar mitzvah money on DJ equipment, and I was always spinning parties, and I DJ'd the prom when I was still in high school. So I was going to the school and I DJ'd my own prom. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Your tradition, you're making money as you're going to school. You felt like you could do it. So then now after the cruise gig, how did you start going up right away after that?
I was then in college, right? Okay. And then this is kind of a testament to what I do now and I've always done is I've always taken the approach of, if you want to do something, you have to make it happen. Right. In my special delivery, it's called Delivery. There's a theme of when am I going to make it? And then I realized that the answer is in the question, when am I going to make it? Right. I have to make it. I have to make the situation. Making it isn't somebody giving you the keys to the castle. Making it is you have to make something, right? You have to be active in it. And so I made a show happen at my college campus. I would do these things we called them coffee houses. I would host. It'd be like a talent show. Anyone in the dorm could perform, they would sign up and do 5 minutes or whatever of their talent. And then I would host and do a long set at the end. So that's what I do now. I mean, you always are going to do that in your creative career, is you have to produce things. You have to make things happen. You have to make that situation.
So you started in college. What college was this?
It was this Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is in the central coast of California.
Yeah. Nice up there.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's not a hotbed for comedy. There was no comedy up there when I was there. But now comedy's in like every little town. It's like, it's great. The comedians today have such an advantage, because when I started, there were no podcasts. There were no. What's that?
What year was that?
Oh, it was a long time ago.
You look like you just graduated college. What year are we in?
Yeah, I consider that a while ago.
Okay.
It's an enigma. I'll tell you that.
Roughly, but, what year, what time, or?
It was like in the time of like, there was no content online, so you couldn't like access. You'd have to like find a
late 90s.
Yeah, it was like DVD time and stuff like that. So you'd have to find like a recording of it, like a hard copy recording of somebody's routine. And if I'm in San Luis Obispo, there's no comedy shows going on. I can't go out and watch. The only places that you could watch like top level comedy is if an act came to your town, or if you were in LA or New York, maybe Boston, maybe San Francisco. Wow. But otherwise it just wasn't much. So now what people have is like, they have the opportunity to listen to podcasts, and podcasts are like the green room. It's like you couldn't get that kind of education unless you were in the scene already. So now people can kind of get the lay of the land, know what's going on. So they're at such an advantage. And I see like newer comedians are able to kind of ramp up quicker because of they're standing on the shoulders of the previous generations, as any generation would do. Right.
The one thing that, I would tell my older self, though, and I'm sure you would agree, is like, Michael, there is no substitute for stage time, and you just need to, just go up there as much as you can. And there is no right. It's like, well, I got to wait for this, wait till I write a little bit more. And there's like, you just got to go up there and do it. So when you started, outside of that gig in San Luis Obispo, when college was done, did you start going to a lot of clubs, and what would that look like?
So how I made the transition to, from doing it in college to doing it on stages in Los Angeles is I entered a contest. It was called The Funniest Person in the Valley. Mm-hmm. And
Valley, that's where I'm from. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah, from Thousand Oaks, which is kind of near there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I entered this contest called Funniest Person in the Valley. Mm-hmm. It was at this comedy club that doesn't exist anymore called the LA Cabaret.
That's the first place I performed at. 1996. I was 19 years old. That's the very first place I performed at, was LA Cabaret.
Yeah.
But you look so much younger to where you would perform at LA Cabaret. That's crazy.
It was toward the end. It was toward the end, Michael.
What year was that end?
Oh yeah, I don't even remember what year that was, but that was this is a long time ago. Yeah. It was but from there was a judge in the audience, and he was a producer of a radio show, and I'd already done radio, and I started talking to him. He's a comedian named Vic Dunlop, who's rest in peace, and he's if you see Vic Dunlop, you'll know who he is.
Yeah.
If you see like a picture of him.
Yeah.
And he was producing this hip hop morning show, which is weird. He was like this older white guy producing a hip hop morning show, and I'm totally into hip hop. And he goes, "You want to come down and do some characters?" I go, "Yeah." He kind of like mentored me, and I did these characters on this morning show, the Baker Boys, and started doing radio stuff, and started getting spots because of that contest, because people saw me, and I was runner up in the contest. So that was a little credit. I could say, hey, I'm legit, and started getting spots, and you get in the mix. When you come to LA, you start meeting people, and then everyone's doing their shows, and they ask you to do their shows, and it just snowballs.
when you start, what would you say is one of your critical mass moments where you're like, ooh, momentum here, starting to get some strides, starting to, careers kind of moving along a little bit. Is there any kind of moments that you can kind of sum it up like that?
There's been a bunch of them. I mean, I don't know if there's one moment, but like I'd say like one of them was there's a show in Los Angeles called Chocolate Sundays,
Yeah.
and it's an urban comedy show, and they had me on and I did really well, kept coming back, and then eventually that led to a lot of stuff. That show, the people at that show, Pookie Wingington and Chris Spencer,
Yeah.
they really helped me launch to do. I did BET Comic View because of that. I did another show called Live in Hollywood because of that, TV shows. So I got a bunch of TV stuff. I got DVDs back in the day, DVD tapings.
Uh-huh.
So that really I think I would say launched me um, into like television. Um, and then I'd say another really great moment was more recently was I got to open for Joe Koy on a world tour.
Oh,
And that was like 2019, early 2020. And I figured it out and I go, wow, I've been in front of more people in those 8-9 months than I was in front of in the previous 3 years. So that was insane. If it weren't for the pandemic ruining my momentum like it did everybody's,
right.
I was starting to sell out my own shows and stuff like that. So, but I couldn't complain because this happened to all of us, right?
Was the Joe Koy one, was that the one in Hawaii? Did you get to do that one?
The special?
Yeah.
No, it was just after that. So after that came out, I was on the tour with him.
Those are still big because he got a lot of play from that. So those
it was huge.
Huge, yeah.
So that special, it was called Coming in Hot.
Yeah.
That started landing him into bigger theaters, like I'd say like 2,000 to 3,000 seats, and some arenas, which were, I'd say 5,000 to the biggest ones we did were 12 to 13,000. That was like the Forum and the Chase Center. So he did Coming in Hot. He was doing clubs and smaller theaters. And then we went to bigger theaters and some arenas. And now he's had 2 or 3 specials since then. Now he's doing all arenas. It's pretty cool to watch.
What did that do for your career when you did some of those big gigs? I mean, what did you notice happen after, did you like, oh shit, my Instagram just got 10,000 followers? Or was like, what was that like? I mean, tell us about that journey.
Definitely had a social media jump, but I adopted that scrappy, do-it-yourself attitude, even with that. And Joe actually pushes you to do that. He pushed me to do that too. So he said, what are you doing in the green room? First time I worked with him, what are you doing in the green room? You got to go out there and promote to those people. And they go, okay, cool. I didn't know if I was allowed to do that. So every show I did with him, I would print flyers. Mm-hmm. I would book a show in most of the markets that I was with him. I would book another show like a month or 2 in advance that was on an off night, like a Wednesday night when I wouldn't be touring with him. And I would return. I would do a return and I would try to sell out a club. And it was, I would go out there. I would hand my cards out, take pictures with people. They'd become my fans now. And I had my whole spring was lined up with sellout shows. I did one of the shows in San Diego. We sold that thing out. And then March 16th, I sold out the Irvine Improv, which is 500 seats. It's a big club.
Yeah.
And March 16th, I'm driving down to go do the Irvine Improv, March 16th, 2020. On my way down, the manager calls me and said, hey, we have to close the show. We have to cancel the show because
the one that you sold out?
Yeah, it was 500 seats. And that's kind of like, that's where I shot my first special, was at that club. And it was like, wow, I'm selling this one out. I had been trying to sell that out for years. And what a heartbreaking thing. And I sold that thing out because I did the forum, the LA forum with Joe, and I announced it on stage. I said, hey, I'm doing the Irvine Improv and I'm doing Ontario Improv. And they both sold out like right away.
Man, did you get to do the Ontario one?
Yeah, well, I did all of them. I did all the shows, but I did them like a year and a half later.
Okay.
So they were still sold out, but some people forgot, or
the momentum was huge.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, you were riding a huge wave.
It was a momentum. So, I think the Irvine show, we sold all the tickets, but we probably had like 400 show up instead of 500.
Yeah.
It's great though. It's still a great show, but
you sold out your own show. I mean, it's great. That's awesome. But
yeah, it was awesome.
What an amazing time for you, for your, because when you do those, first of all, your peer group at that point, working with him, you as an artist, you're working on your craft and in front of large audiences, smaller audience, and I always have small ones, but those large audiences, and you're building up your career's building. I mean, you must have, what did that feel like? I mean, I know what it must have felt like, but that's a great time.
Yeah, you know what it did is it opened my eyes to a path, right? I go, okay, well, his audience obviously loves what I do because I'm coming out cold. Nobody before me. I'm coming out to a brand new audience, and they're instantly were on board with me. So I'm like, okay, this audience is my target. There's a huge audience out there for me. All I got to do is create content that keeps me in front of them. So since then, that's what I've been trying to do. And I created my own comedy special, and really like that experience inspired me to make it bigger than I was planning to make it. Like I really pulled out all the stops to make my special delivery, which launched on YouTube this last Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So since I put that out, a lot of the clips have really gone viral. I've noticed definitely there's more people coming out to my shows.
It's not easy. You got to be likable to, mass groups of people. You also have to be likable to the comedian that, like Joe Koy, he wanted you to be, well, first of all, how'd that even start?
How'd that happen? I've known him since he moved to LA. We just were like two comedians trying to get up at the Laugh Factory. And we've always just kept in touch, and we, from time to time, run into each other. Like I was in Cleveland doing a club, and he was doing the other club across town, and we ran into each other and we hung out. And I brought him to my room and I showed him how I make music on my computer. And at that time, that was, not many people were doing that. And I was using my actual computer keyboard to hit notes, and that like amazed him. And he always remembered that, and then we live in the same city in LA, Studio City. So we would run into each other in town. And then one day he goes, hey, you want to come do my podcast? I'm like, yeah, sure. I go do his podcast. So, and then one day he goes, I'm at the Brea Improv doing a show. I pull up to the Brea Improv. His face is it has a mural. There's a mural of him on the side of the building. I go, what the hell? I go inside. There's another mural on the wall, and it says, Joe Koy, congratulations on 72 sold out shows in a row. I'm like, what? So over the years, he had sold out every show. And he does, when I did the Brea Improv with him, he did like 16 shows in a week. It was like two shows a night. It was crazy.
It's interesting how some comedians like hit like that, because your material it's almost kind of similar in the sense that he has this effortless way to like describe about his life, on stage. And so do you, it's like I'm not kissing your ass, but when Eric does his routine, this is a guy with a fine-tuned instrument. I mean, it's just like you're in the zone, you're flowing. You have your instrument is on call when you want it to be. It's nice, Yeah,
I think we do appeal to our audiences would overlap a lot because we both talk about cultural things. My girlfriend's actually Filipina, So I do now talk about a lot of that stuff too. Um, but yeah, when I texted him a picture of his mural on the wall, and he was across town at the Irvine Improv, and he goes, "Hey man, you want to come down and do a guest spot on my show tomorrow?" I go down. It was like performing in front of that audience, like I just described. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this feels like home." I go, "Hey, if you ever need anybody, you let me know because this was so much fun." And he kept calling me to do his shows, and it turned into a tour. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like it just sometimes it just clicks.
What's it like touring with a comedian, that's doing a lot of dates, you're doing a lot of dates together, and I mean, which my wife's a big Bon Jovi fan. I was watching the Bon Jovi documentary. It's inevitable to have in every relationship have challenging moments. Or like, how did you navigate that? And, how long was that particular tour, and what did that look like?
We really had a good time, man. We got to go to six countries: Australia, Dubai, Philippines, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and US. And when you're friends with somebody in your adult life, when you're friends with somebody in high school, you're with them every day. And when you're an adult, if you see your friends now, when do you see your best friend? How often do you see him? Like once a month?
No,
Twice a month?
but I mean, every once a week.
Once a week.
Yeah.
Once a week.
Yeah.
But when you're touring with somebody, you're with that person 24/7.
Right.
Pretty much. You're not sleeping in the same bed, but
right.
You're with them all the time, and you develop a different kind of relationship, a different kind of a friendship where it's like it's a constant thing. You don't really get to do that with your friends in your adult life. So in that way, it was really kind of cool to gain those relationships and other people that were on the tour, like the videographer for his tour. I'm still friends with him today.
Everybody got along after so much time with each other. I mean, like there's no hiccups ever.
Yeah, I mean, just like any tour, like any relationship, you would have whatever,
What are some of the little things that happen on because that's a long time. It's a lot of volatility, touring like that. What are some of the things that come up that are like, bug each other, and I'm just so curious to know about a relationship like that. I never talked to him, toured with him, that much and that long.
I feel like we had a lot of fun with it though. I mean, it was kind of a rivalry of on stage, but we knew Joe came on my podcast and described it like he wanted it to be that way. He said he put me on his tour because he doesn't like openers that are easy to follow. And all respect to him for doing that, because I was not holding back. And he goes, and that happened to him when he used to open for Cedric the Entertainer. He said he blew up the room so hard the first time he opened for Cedric. He was like thinking, "Oh man, Cedric's never going to be able to follow this." And Cedric goes on and just destroys. So he goes, so our rivalry every night was I was trying to make it impossible for him to follow me. And then he would go out there and try to get people to forget my name.
That's so great. You guys seem like, you got to pick that person wisely. It seems like he picked you wisely. You seem like you're supportive of each other as a whole, and it really, kind of your cadence almost seems like, because he seems like a nice guy. You seem like a really nice guy. So I think that's why it worked out well.
Yes, for sure. His sister is part of his team. So she was like,
was dating the black guy, the one wanted to make him chicken. And there's a whole routine that Joe Koy talks about.
Oh, Dre. Yeah, Dre.
Well, he has a couple sisters.
Yeah, Dre and Gemma. So Dre is her husband, and they're friends. They're friends of ours. They're myself and my girlfriend. I feel like even though we don't talk all the time, we have that relationship because we spent so much time together at that time.
That's so much fun.
So for sure.
where are you at right now? What's going on with your career, your life? What's happening with you right now?
So I am a constant student of social media right now. So since I released my comedy, yeah. So since I released my comedy special, I've not only released clips from my special, but I've been learning so much about the what it takes to succeed with content, and I've just been editing like crazy, and I try to put something up every day, and I've almost every day since Thanksgiving I put up a video. I'm also directing. I directed a comedy special for comedian Don Friesen, and we did that a couple weeks ago up in Seattle. I am a voice of a Playboy demon shark on an animated show called Hell of a Boss, which is super popular. And I got to go do a Comic-Con and sign autographs for that. This last weekend, I went to this. It's called Level Up in Las Vegas. It was a crazy experience. Those fans are just insane. And so, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing relaunching my podcast, creating a new podcast with my girlfriend, and just all out, balls to the wall content 2024. E. Schwartz taking over.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I mean, you're busy. Are you having a really good time?
Yeah, I mean, I really am. I'm tired, you know. I'm tired, but this is one of those times where you see the light and you're like, run. I see that. I see what's there. And I'm getting these results. And every time you get a little result, every time like a brand will reach out to me, or I sold out a show. It's just such fuel to be like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm on the right track. These are the results that I was dreaming of for so long.
This is interesting. What brand reached out to you?
Well, I probably.
Oh yeah. What brand reaches out to you? What do they want? How do they want you to promote the brand?
There was one of them that like brought me out to South by Southwest to do content for them. They were like a design brand, and I did a lot of comedy content around graphic design, and so they just wanted me to like cover what they were doing and just show off what they were doing. So I made a video around that. Another one is like a bald product.
Yeah,
I'm bald. If you're listening, you can't see, but I am real bald.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I actually used the product and I liked it. And yeah, so we're talking about doing some stuff together. So they just, I feel like I reach their audience. It's when you define your audience to somebody that overlaps and to a brand that overlaps with you, I feel like it's just a natural fit.
So there's a comedian, Matt Bond. He's the one that argued with a lady on stage. He's like, I got more in the chamber. Remember, she was like, that's the most racist thing you ever said. He's like, I got more in the chamber. Remember that guy?
I don't know if I saw that.
Yeah, he was in the Comedy Cellar. I think it was a Comedy Cellar, and he's talking, and then somebody starts heckling. So he's like, "Shut the fuck up," and then he starts yelling at her. It went viral like last year.
Okay.
He doesn't, but he's like bigger social presence rather than like been around for a super long time. Anyways, he Dr. Squatch soap.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
They hired him to do a routine about soap and just like a little blurb and then he posts it on his social, and they paid him to do that. I was like, that is genius, because he's blown up, and he's mentioning the soap, and there's this whole little thing that they did. And I think that's a great avenue. First of all, I'm like I said, I'm a ham and egg comedian, but I also, we were talking to pregame about this backpack company I launched. I said, and the socials that I'm doing, and my socials suck. I'm really trying to navigate and build it up, for the brand. But that to me would be a vehicle that I'd love to do. Maybe you, it's like send you out a bolo pack, figure out a way to do what they did, but they're built this routine where they had this, like, I say routine, maybe I had like 30 seconds, 30-second kind of like, 3 jokes, about, he worked it in,
Okay.
It was really clever.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, there should be more of that for comedians.
I think, yeah, like I said, like what brands are looking for, as far as I can see, is they are looking for who's that, excuse the word, influencer, who's that person that's reaching the audience that I want to reach, and how can we naturally, it works so much better when it's natural, right? Like organic, they call it, where it's not a hard sell. I've worked with brands that are like, we want you to just do what you do. We don't want you to like try to make it an ad.
Right.
So like your brand, Volator, it seems like it's, at first glance, it seems like you're trying to reach people who do outdoor activities, right? People who camp. So who's that comedian or influencer that is already in that space, is already reaching that audience?
Right.
Maybe there's a camping influencer. Maybe there's, but by the way, I've never seen that. So maybe that's a niche that nobody's explored.
It really, I think Dr. Squatch started it, and I don't know what soap has to do with Matt Bond or anything like that. He was doing a routine, and I'm like, wait, this is a routine. And I was like, oh wait. Then they like flashed like something about Dr. Squatch afterwards, and it was like it was very covert, it was very cool, and
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, if they do more of that. I would be the kind of business owner that would hire comedians to do that fit the right niche, because there's got to be the right niche. Otherwise, you're kind of promoting to an audience that like that comedians, soap is, everybody uses soap. So Dr. Squatch might be a different, situation.
But what I like about them, and where I think they overlap with like the camping audience, is they're natural, and that I don't want to put any chemicals in my body. If you're, they have a lot of their commercials are like outdoors. So I feel like you're reaching people that have a healthy lifestyle, that are active, that don't want to sacrifice quality of soap and stink. They don't want to stink.
Right.
They want to be a civilized person, but they also don't want to put bad stuff in their body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's awesome. So now let's get back into you. Long-term, 5, 10, 15-year plan. What's the long-term plan? What do you got? What are you thinking about?
Yeah. What I've kind of set up right now is, with all this content, is, what I think comedians are nowadays is we're content studios, right? Mm-hmm. So whether we're putting out a special or a podcast, or we do a daily short, or we do, rants, or whatever it is, not only do we perform on stage now, we perform online. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest comedians are going to be, I think we're, with like Chappelle, or Chappelle never really had to be a content creator. His content is
the old-fashioned way. He did it on TV with Comedy Central.
Yeah. Right. That was his content, right? And that was a television show. And now we, as comedians, we have to constantly be the television show. It's annoying, but there's ways that I'm discovering to kind of, you got to be a business where the fuel is the content. You got to figure out a way to keep the content going, to hire people to help you make it, and to free yourself up to be the big picture guy. In that way, that's the business part of it.
Right. That's business. Would you just describe business pretty much right there?
Right.
How to leverage your time, and how to still, become, Gary Vaynerchuk, he says that every business, and being a comedian is no different, should be a media company. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'm a Vaynerchuk. Wow, I got that Vaynerchuk knowledge, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
and it's true. Like, whether, it's people want to know whether it's a business, they want to know more about the comedian, they want to know more about the business owner, they want to see a daily kind of, impetus. They want something that they feel they got that niche, and they can always tune in. And Eric Schwartz is, kind of vibe is always the same thing that I like a lot, and I get that daily dose of that. I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. It's annoying to I edit most of my stuff right now.
What do you
And
do?
it's
Cap cut
like
on your cell phone? Are you cap cutting it all day, or you're going even more elaborate than that?
I try to use CapCut, but honestly it's harder for me. I use Premiere. It's
Adobe
easy.
Premiere on a desktop?
Yeah. It's easier just because you can move things easier. And CapCut, it's like you're trying to move it with your thumbs and you
Right.
can't really get exact with it. And it just feels limiting.
It is. Well, it is. I mean, you could do so
Yeah.
much more on Adobe Premiere because there's
Right.
so many more things. It's a desktop, and it's very robust. But
Yeah.
I guess
But
if you're
CapCut's pretty dope. CapCut is pretty amazing. Like
I am.
in a pinch, I'm using that and I'm like, wow, it looks really good. And the effects are amazing. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and especially if you're on the go, So that substantiates getting a new iPhone every comes out.
True.
Oh, it's a business, It's like that.
True.
So outstanding. I just love your career. I mean, it
Thanks.
sounds like so much fun. Where's your next big gig?
I'm okay. So I'm putting my tour together right now.
Uh-huh.
And my next big gig, well, what I'm really excited about, I'm hitting some of my regular cities. I'm going to be in Houston and San Antonio and like LA and all that stuff. But what I'm really excited about and nervous about is I'm doing a show in Spanish. My first
Wow.
headlining show in Spanish.
I hope your stepdad taught you a lot since that early age, because you've never done that, right?
I've done shows in Spanish, but not headlining. So I'm going to do 40 minutes in Spanish, 40, maybe 45. And it's July 31st. And so got a little time, but that's a different beast.
Yeah, because the cadence and the timing and the inflection and you're not, are you super comfortable with the ineffable, like with English that you grew up with? I mean, certain little things that you pull, levers that you could pull with a certain language. That's so interesting and different. I mean, have you dabbled a little tiny bit of that?
Yeah, I've done little sets, like I said, but I'm forcing myself to do it because it was one of my goals of this year. The opportunity came up and I just said yes, threw myself into it, and I got to rise to meet the challenge and force myself to do it. Because otherwise I'll never do it. I'll be like, I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. So that is an interesting goal this summer. And then I'm also going to be
real quick. That is so smart because I mean, you've already thought about the demographic and everything that you're going to gain from that, right?
Well, that's the secondary. Yeah, look, if I can be good in Spanish, I'll tell you, then that could happen. That's a secondary thing to me. But primarily is that I promised myself I would do it. And I'm like, and it just means a lot to me because it means a lot to me because of my relationship with my stepdad. And also I talk about it a lot. I talk about me loving the culture and me loving being able to speak Spanish. And I'm like, okay, well then put my money where my mouth is. And let's do it. Let's show people I can actually do that. A full headlining show in Spanish. Then what's up? And yes, there is a demand for Spanish language comedy. I think there's a big demand, but there's probably less gringos doing it. So I would definitely be one of very few gringos that could do that.
It's so unique. That is so amazing. It's incredible. I've never heard of that before. I'm sure you might have heard it somewhere. I mean, has it been done? A lot of people do that.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure, but I mean,
have you ever heard anybody doing that?
Ain't gonna do it like me.
First one.
What's that?
You might be the first gringo, like a comedian to do that.
I'm sure I'm not. I'm sure there's somebody else doing it, but I don't know, because I can't. I mean, there's a billion people in the world, more than a billion, right? 6 billion.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of comedians that are doing well like you are that have done that.
There's that are not native speakers and aren't by blood Latino. I'm not Latino by blood. I'm just, I was raised with culture. So yeah, I mean, it definitely would be unique, and I feel maybe on a certain level, I would be the only one, or who knows? But I don't have to be the only one. I don't have to be the only one.
No, but it is a big promotion opportunity.
Yeah.
That's a high in Hollywood. They would call that a high concept idea.
All right.
It is. It's a nice one-liner. English speaking, Anglo comedian is going to do a whole set in Spanish.
I feel like, I kind of have that desire to just blow people's minds with things. And like, that's why if you watch my special, I do this whole multimedia thing, which is totally different. I've always been into like, how can I do it differently? How can I just shock people? Like, holy shit, did you see that? I can't believe that person did that. And I don't know where I get that, but I feel like that's what entertainment is, right?
That's entertainment. We're American, man. That's what.
Yeah, giving people somebody that blows them away, and any famous comedians doing that, right? So
that's what a comedian's constantly swimming like a shark, figuring out where's my voice, but what can I do to like push the envelope here and do something that's special.
Right.
That's awesome. Tell everybody how they can find out more about you.
The jump off would be my website, ericschwartzlive.com. And then if you want to find me on Instagram, which seems to be the preferred platform, would be Eric Schwartz with 3 E's at the beginning. EEERICSCHWARTZ. It's pronounced like a DJ scratch. Eric Schwartz.
Eric Schwartz, man. You got one hell of a thumbprint. I mean, man. A great career, and I'm just really fascinated by it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolotour.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.